everyone this afternoon. My name is Stacy Lewis. I serve as the Chief Program Officer and Deputy Chief Executive at Young Survival Coalition. It's my pleasure to have each and every one of you here. I think that your presence demonstrates a great commitment to reaching and serving and engaging more and more young women, recognizing as we even look around this room that the experience of young women in breast cancer is very diverse. And as YSC has a commitment to really making sure that we're reaching and serving all, hoping that you enjoy this workshop. Thank you for the feedback on the true and false questions. The whole purpose was to make sure that they were a little challenging and complex. And so with that, I have the lovely pleasure of introducing you to the beautiful Miss Desiree Walker. I will allow her to introduce herself, and I hope you enjoy the workshop.
Good afternoon. Come on now. Good afternoon. So, yeah, I'm one of those people that definitely need the energy from the audience, so please work with me. So I'd like to also welcome you not only to YSC's Summit, but also to welcome you to this workshop, Collective Solutions, Advancing and Achieving Diversity and Inclusion. As Stacy mentioned, my name is Desiree Walker, and I will, for the sake of time, quickly identify myself as a two-time breast cancer victor. But for the purposes of YSC, I am the co-chair of the Council of Advisors, and I am the vice president of the board of directors. So again, welcome. In order to start us off, I saw this quote and I thought that it would help to set the tone for where we're trying to go today and what we hope to achieve. And so the quote is from Jacqueline Woodson, who is an American writer, and she says, "Diversity is about all of us. And it is about us having to figure out how we walk through this world together." And we know as survivors, as co-survivors, that the breast cancer journey is quite complex. But when you add diversity to it, it can be even more challenging. And so we thank you for coming today to participate in this workshop. And as Stacy mentioned, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, the reason why we created that little activity when you entered was we really wanted you to realize that diversity is so many different things. But also, we wanted to start to provoke your thoughts around things that you may not have thought about as it related to diversity as well. And so clearly the objective was more so thought-provoking and not supposed to be anxiety-riddled. So today what we are going to do is we are going to give you a little bit of history of the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative, which basically was a year-long research project is how it started a few years ago after the board and management committed that diversity and inclusion was an area that they wanted to focus on. And so we actually had an individual that came in and did the research for us for diversity so that we could actually understand what the landscape was for diversity, not only for breast cancer, but also for young adults who had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And we wanted to be able to understand this landscape because it would help us to identify what gaps existed so that we could also narrow our focus on what we would initially try to implement and then what we would hope to do over long term. So what we thought at this particular point, and this summit gave us an opportunity, is to have a few people from our constituents, as well as our other supporters, to come together for a conversation. Because diversity is so complex, it is important to have as many perspectives as possible in order for us to have a thoughtful approach and potentially be successful in this particular endeavor. So what we have done at this particular point, and as I said, I'm just kind of giving highlights only because we really want to get into the time frame where you can actually give input. What we did, we took a focus a few years ago and decided to go out to the West Coast in order to have programming, i.e. a symposium and the summit. And so this would help us to increase our reach, demographically. We also took an opportunity to go to Jackson, Mississippi, in order to reach the people of that area, because we didn't really have boots on the ground there, but clearly knew that the need was there as well. And then going to the West Coast, we also then stepped into trying to make sure the great resources that we have available, both digitally as well as in print, we could start to translate that for the Spanish-speaking population, because language can be a barrier for some. And so your presence here today, we're going to say that you've identified yourself as a forward thinker and that you have a creative mind. And you're definitely someone that is interested in helping us to advance and achieve diversity, inclusion as we continue on this journey. So I think that, it's always important for starters to actually have a definition, because many people may define diversity in various ways, but we wanted to give you how we are defining diversity. And so I'll just use the quote from Verna Myers: "Diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance." And so you'll see from this puzzle that there are various thinking styles, experiences, skills, nationality, sexual orientation, gender. So there's many different things that comprise diversity. And so I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but diversity refers to the range of characteristics that make an individual unique. And it's not limited, although often thought of only being race, ethnicity, color, nationality, culture, gender, religion, sexual orientation, language, disability, geographic, education, socioeconomics, life, political affiliations as well. And inclusion is putting diversity into action by appreciating and advising or evaluating, valuing individual differences and creating a sense of belonging. And that's really what we are hoping to be able to do with our work. So our goals basically are to reach a larger, broader, and more diverse audience of young people identified or affected by breast cancer. And we would also like to not limit it to just women of color or women who partner with women, transgender, or people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. We would like to be able to establish collaborative relationships with other groups serving unique populations to ensure that all young people affected by breast cancer in all communities have access to not only information, but also to the support that they need on the journey. And we were also thinking that we would explore reworking some of our existing programs and creating new ones wherever is needed to emphasize that will lead to a higher number of people from diverse populations engaging with the organization. So the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative, a roadmap was created for this endeavor. It's actually a multi-year strategy. And so, one of the reasons why we've come together for this particular workshop here at the summit is, because we want to continue making strides as it relates to this initiative. However, you can have great ideas and you can have thoughts, but at the same time, we acknowledge that at times there can be challenges when you're starting something new. And so some of the challenges that we have come to realize related to both our bandwidth, which is our human resources, our human capital, but also there are financial aspects to it that we face in the current economic climate as well. And so we thought that if we open this up and started to do something or take a different approach in terms of trying to have our constituents come together to share some of their perspectives on how we could potentially tackle the work that we're trying to do in the most efficient and cost-effective manner, it would be a great opportunity to bring people in to get thoughts and ideas in order to have a larger team, a larger force behind this effort. And so we understand that each of you have had different experiences since you heard the words, you have breast cancer, or whether your partner has heard the words, or whether or not you are just an individual who cares about this effort. And so we seek those perspectives. And so today we're going to invite you to collaborate with us, to share your thoughts on how YSC can conquer some of these challenges in order to reach, serve more young adults that have been diagnosed with breast cancer and their co-survivors. And we hope that you see this as an opportunity to engage in sharing your diverse perspectives to help us with this initiative. And we will talk more about this later, but also would like you to know that this is not just a one-time only. This is the beginning of the conversation, and so we hope that you might continue to want to assist us as we face other challenges, or perhaps give feedback that you didn't think about today that you would want to share with us as we look at all the ideas and suggestions that are put forth. And so in this phase one of the initiative or roadmap, we are focused on the African American, the Asian Pacific Islanders and Native American communities, the Hispanic and Latino communities, the Arab and Middle Eastern, the African and Caribbean, the LGBT, and also the rural and medically underserved. And I indicated earlier some of the efforts that we made with those respective groups and populations. So what we're going to do today, you will see that we have a few easels around the room. What we're going to do is we're going to have what we call a roundtable discussion. And for that discussion, we currently have identified 6 challenges that we're going to put forth. I don't know either. He didn't tell me about that noise. Anyway, so we're going to put forth the 6 challenges that we have identified at this point. We do not have enough time for you to speak on all 6. And so we're going to ask you, of the list that is here, for you to choose 3 topics that you would like to lend your voice to. And so we have the easels around the room, and you'll go to a respective corner in order to have that discussion. When you get together with your work group, you will need to identify a note taker or a scribe who will basically put down the points from the discussion. When you, and because we have scribes who potentially may want to move around as well, you're just going to leave the work on the easel and just go to the next site. And at the end, scribes will have an opportunity to do a report back on one of the topics that they wrote on for the group. So the challenges that have been identified, the first one is, how can YSC best reach and educate a multilingual population, not only through digital but and print? Because one of the things that we would just like to highlight, which I think I touched on earlier, is the cost of being able to translate materials for all the various groups that could benefit. And so that's where that comes from. Another question would be, how can YSC reach and support more people living in rural areas without physically being there? And then we also have, how do we educate the YSC community about data collection and the value of collecting demographic data from diverse people with diverse backgrounds? And one of the things that I would just say in that regard is, oftentimes when we go to websites or we go to the doctor, or a lot of places, there's always a questionnaire, there's a survey, there's an evaluation with lots of questions trying to gather information. And oftentimes, individuals will check other or say that they prefer not to answer. And so what we're hoping to gather is, what are some of the reasons why people potentially would not complete the question, and to find out how we can present the questions that are important. Because when you seek funding, or when you try to have researchers do research that relate to not only young people diagnosed with breast cancer, but also those from diverse backgrounds, it's important to be able to show that these people actually exist and that there is a need. But if you don't have the data, you are then have difficulties. And so the next one would be, how can volunteers help introduce YSC to diverse survivors, community-based organizations, as well as healthcare providers? And so I think that one is probably, relatively clear in that regard. And then we also have, how can volunteers be empowered to provide YSC with constructive feedback regarding what's happening on the local level? And so, again, we are a national organization, and we are trying to increase our reach, but we can't be everywhere. And so for those of you that have relationships locally that you could potentially help us to connect to, that because at the end of the day, our goal is that anyone diagnosed as a young person with breast cancer or having a family member, friend, a co-survivor can actually...
It looks like they didn't plug the laptop in. That's all.
All right, well, I'm going to leave you to
You keep it happening.
I need to stand over here for the recording, so let me just kind of
Bert, you have your plug?
appreciate you accommodating our little hiccup here, so apologies on that. But so where was I? Yes, so we definitely would appreciate learning how we can potentially connect with people on a local level in your areas. And then the final question are, what are the ways constituents can help develop content focused on individual diverse populations? Oh, awesome. Thank you much. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to do, as I said, there are 6 challenges. Each one is going to be assigned to a table. Each group should identify a scribe and a note taker per challenge, and we ask that the scribe write neatly or as neatly as possible. And although we have 6 challenges presented, you will only be able to speak on 3 of those challenges. However, if you'd like to take a picture of any of the challenges that you were not able to get to and you want to send that information in to us after, we would greatly appreciate that as well. And then at the end, we hope that each group or each topic, someone who was the scribe for it will actually come and be able to do a report out so that everyone can hear if you didn't necessarily go to that particular topic, and if you have any additional thoughts, that would be greatly appreciated. So each discussion is going to be about 15 minutes. And then we will let you know when it's about the 5-minute mark in terms of what timing is left. And then we'll let you know when you can actually rotate to the next table. I know I've said a whole lot in a few minutes, but are there any questions? Are you ready for the challenge? Yes! So I would say that the questions are spread out in no specific order. The idea is that you will form your group organically. You gravitate to the question that you want to participate in first. You don't have to go table by table. You don't have to stay with the same group the entire time. Please feel free to make all notes that come in from the group. Here's the scribe pad. They should be around. And if you have any questions about the question, don't hesitate to holler at Desiree or I, and we can make sure that we add some level of clarity. Ready? Let the games begin.
Okay, so we're going to quickly gather back toward the front. Thank you so much for sharing your innovations, your creative thinking, and your collective impact with us. Here's Ms. Desiree.
So thank you. I hope that you found this experience to be insightful as well, and giving you the opportunity to share your perspectives. What we are going to do at this particular time, pretty much we have something from each one. So what I'm going to do in the effort of time, I'm going to just pick 3 challenges. And one of the individuals who was a scribe for that particular challenge, you will get a microphone from Stacy, and if you can then just give us a little report back in terms of the thoughts that the group had. And so the first one that I will touch on, reach and educate a multilingual population, which I think is number 1? Mm-hmm. So do we have anyone who was the scribe for challenge number 1 to?
That would be lovely, Heidi.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So one of the things that we talked about is that in many cultures, that it's sometimes difficult to share in a group, and so we need to think about venues or ways that provide survivors and co-survivors the ability to be able to obtain information but also ask questions in a way that feels safe to them. And so we talked about the need to, engage with local cultural centers, language schools, churches, and other trusted sources where they just go within their own community to look for ways to partner and provide that information. We also talked about that while there are translation services sometimes like hospitals where they'll provide a number where they can translate into a particular language, sometimes there are things that are lost in translation. So an example we talked about was a woman who was going in for surgery didn't know she was having surgery because lumpectomy translated still didn't resonate with her and didn't mean anything. And so being thoughtful and mindful about really working with survivors who have been through that, who understand that experience, to be able to look for those scenarios where the medical jargon, if you will, doesn't really resonate even when translated, is important. So keeping it simple, aligning to those cultural norms, and dealing with specific issues. If you have a family member who it's taboo to talk about health situations, how do you help a survivor through that and still get connection and the support that they need? And I think that covers everything from our discussion. The other idea that came up that translated, and I think the next group built on it, was it was mentioned, the thought of having video-based support groups available for people to watch offline. One idea that popped was, could we video diverse survivor stories in their own native language and then have English subtitles overlaying that? And so that way, then that's another way of getting an organic dialogue and having it available when people can digest it. And being able to touch on different topics. I don't know if there's a couple other ideas here that I wasn't a part of, but.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, Claudia?
I just remind right now, they're using, for example, infographics with education, easily to learn and everything in social media will be another good way to educate population.
Thank you. And so we are going to then go to challenge number 2, which I think is in the back, and that is how to reach and support more people living in rural areas. Who was a scribe for that?
We have some pink writing and some black writing. Now, I can interpret, but
We're going to be
know
shy?
the danger's there.
All right, David. I see you kind of look like you want to get up. We thank you for being here and all the input that you have made today, so we appreciate you.
So our question was how can YSC reach and support more people living in rural areas without physically being there? We discussed radio announcements, asked for donated time, and then linked those to social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, or whatnot, to mail out pamphlets once they do obtain some information on patients. Contact local health departments and local family services, either by the county or by the city. Local cable programming, ask for donated time, and then also link that to social media, either YSC or any other platforms. Also ask for an ambassador for the area. It could be a volunteer to reach out to newly diagnosed patients, or somebody that lives close by there that's already affiliated with YSC that would like to donate time to go out to these areas. Social media, join local groups for these rural areas, or paid advertising for these areas and link to those social groups as well. Leave literature at offices, clinics, hospitals, universities, and churches that people can pick up and contact or look up on social media or on the internet. And then ask churches to donate space and time to donate functions, or just to set up a place to leave pamphlets after church so people can pick them up or something. That was what we discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else that worked on that want to have a few quick remarks? Otherwise, we are going to move. Going once, twice. Okay. So the third challenge I decided as I was standing here quickly that I'd like to focus on is challenge number 3, because that seemed to be one that had large crowds. So the challenge is regarding demographic data collection. How do we educate the YSC community about data collection and the value of collecting demographic data on diverse backgrounds? Scribe, note taker. I know that there
Notes
were.
back here, too.
Yes, there's 3 pages, so I know that there were note takers over there.
Nobody
Come on
wrote-
now.
Nobody wrote it. It just appeared.
It just appeared. Who?
I think that we took a different bent, but when we got over to the other one, I think that we were aligned with what is captured here.
So talk about just a little bit about the bent you guys took.
Okay.
Because I think that's just insightful for me.
Okay.
For us.
So when we were talking about generally, information that's being collected, not specific to YSC, and then how YSC might be able to work with other organizations, other registries, how you get the information out there. And then, yeah. And, I think that it goes to what's said here, too. So I think, you have to kind of frame it as to why it's important to collect the information. And then, we talked about various places where you could potentially get that information out there. But, I think that when Desiree kind of clarified what this question was looking for, I think that what's captured here is probably more aligned with the question.
And so, who's this? Who's scribe?
Oh, I think that was David.
He needed a break. Okay.
Yeah, understood.
Thank you, Beth.
I have to say something related to this challenge. Sorry, I wasn't there.
No worries.
But I think it's very important when you say educate the YSC community about data collection, it's very important in minorities communities to encourage them to participate in assessments, evaluations, because a lot of the times our voice is not there. It's only American voice and assume with a lot of assumptions about the Latino community or another minority, but this encourage the community to participate in research and data collection and everything. And in that point, I think doing a partnerships with a local community organization will be a great way to educate directly to the community.
Thank you. So I'd like to, again, thank you so much for being here with us in this endeavor. But I'd also like to thank you for all the feedback, the thoughts, perspectives that you shared. And so I had omitted to mention this earlier, but for the questions, statements, thought-provoking activity that we had, we will have on the back tables the answers, because I think many of you might want to know how many you got right for the competitive ones, how many you got right or wrong, so the answers will be available. But we also, we will, after this, we will be looking at all the feedback and perspectives that were shared to see how we can begin to shape the work and address the work that we are hoping to do. Want to emphasize that this is an ongoing process. It is not just today, and we haven't saved the world or resolved all our concerns. And so we hope that each of you would like to join us on this aspect of the journey in terms of diversity and inclusion. And so we will also have in the back a sheet of paper if you are interested in participating moving forward. Please give us your name because we know that each of you have already registered. We don't need you to give us all of your contact information because we can find you. We just need you to say that I'm in. So we thank you for that because at the end of the day, we do value your thoughts and opinions in terms of how we can solve the problems and challenges that we will face on this Herculean effort in terms of diversity and inclusion. What we'd also like to let you know, because some of you, this may be your first time attending the summit, we want you to know that there are many opportunities to get involved with the organization, and especially as we undergo this diversity piece, it would be very important for you to consider getting involved to whatever capacity you are able to do so. Because at the end of the day, this for all young adults diagnosed with breast cancer and their co-survivors, we really want to be able to amplify the voice, because oftentimes, whether it be scientific conferences in neighborhoods, whether it is in your your state office or in Washington, we need to make sure that it is known that young people do get breast cancer, and that the needs are unique, and the services that are required or necessary are very important, and make sure that we are on the radar versus not. And so there are many opportunities, as I said, here within the organization, but also being ambassadors, as the term was used in one of the report backs, in the outside community. We are looking for that as well. And so with my final thank you, I just want to leave you, I'm a big quote person, so I just want to leave you with one more quote as you set off for this great weekend that is ahead of you. And this one is actually by Henry Ford. And it says, "Coming together is the beginning. Staying together is progress. And working together is success." Thank you very much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Desiree.